All right. So I'm going to make 4 rectangles and try and make them the same length as best you can. Okay, we're going to be painting inside of these. And we're going to be doing gradations. You guys remember what gradations are? Can someone tell me? Huh? It's okay if one of them is wider than the other. Can someone tell me what a gradation is? Come on. Somebody? Anybody?
Colors going from like lighter to darker, darker to lighter.
Thank you. Yes. That's all they are. Doing a gradation, it could be color or it could be black and white, a grayscale. Right? Remember when we did the drawing of the object last year? And I had the same thing. Oops. This time, instead of using pencil, we're going to be using paint. Right? Okay. The first one we're going to do is go from white to black, solid black. Second one we're going to do is go from white to what's called pure hue. What's the definition of hue, by the way? Anyone? What's the definition of a hue? No one remembers? A color. Right? So like red, yellow, green, blue. The solid color. That's the hue. Okay? Alright, next thing is we're going to go from the pure hue to solid black. And then the last one is going to be from one pure hue to another pure hue. Okay? So for example, yellow to red, blue or green to blue. Okay? Alright, everyone good with this? Does anyone need me to explain something again? I am going to have people submit this demo or this practice painting. Okay? Can I move on? So I kind of need people to respond or interact when I'm asking questions so I know where people are at. Caritina, go ahead.
You can move on.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm gonna zoom in. We're gonna start with the white to the black. So I'm using this tray. I would say I don't necessarily love this tray, but I don't hate it. I do like that it has little wells. So these are called wells, by the way. Okay. And then, so you're supposed to put the paint inside of these, but you don't necessarily need to have this. You can have a paper plate, right? Or even a regular plate from your kitchen. Just make sure to wash it or your mom's gonna get pissed. Okay. All right. So white and black. What is the darkest paint that you will ever use? Huh? Yeah, black. Black overpowers everything. Okay. What is the lightest paint you're gonna be using?
White.
Yeah. White will get overpowered by everything. Remember what I said last year? A little bit of black goes a long way, right? So I'm gonna take some white. By the way, acrylic paint, once it gets on your clothing or any surface for that matter, it's not easy to get off, right? You can try and get it. The best thing is to try and get it off as soon as you see it on whatever surface you're using. Okay, before it dries, wipe it off. So I have white there, and then I'm gonna have some black here. I put less black than I did white because we're not going to use a lot of black. Which paint do you think I'm going to start with? The white or the black? Say that again?
White.
Yeah, the white, because it's lighter. You always start with the lighter paint. Okay, and then I have my cup here. Hi, Ryan. Ryan, we were doing a demonstration here with the paint, like I said last class. So just follow along what we're doing. Try and catch up. Okay. All right. So you don't need to use a lot of water when it comes to acrylic paint. Okay. I'm going to use this flat brush, and then later on use the pointy one. Okay. All right. So we're going to start with white. I'm going to just put a little bit of water, not a lot. Okay. A little bit means very little drops on my skin when I'm wiping it. And take it. First put it here. I never want to dip the paint into another paint on the wells, or else you're going to tint or mess up that solid paint, right? So you always want to mix somewhere else. I'm going to put it here. So I'm taking that. Yes, the paper is already white, but I'm going to be creating a gradual change from solid white to solid black. Now blending is the toughest part when it comes to paint. Again, I'm dragging the paintbrush. I said this last year. You always want to drag your paintbrush, never push. Okay? So we're going from solid white and moving towards solid black gradually, right? So I'm taking the paint and dragging the white more than halfway across the bar. Okay, and this is where you kind of have to move a little faster. So I'm going to rinse my paintbrush so I have no more white on it. Here's my towel that I'm wiping it on. You can use a paper towel. I'm going to just take a tiny drop of black and actually mix it with the paint I already have here, the white. You know, it should be a really light gray. Okay, and this is where I'm working a little fast before it dries. You can kind of see it, right, on my paper. Once acrylic dries, by the way, you can't just magically add water to it and expect it to come back like the watercolors did last year, right? Once it dries, it dries. You have to, and if you want to paint over it and you want to blend it again, you have to make the color again or mix the paint again. Okay. So when we're shading or blending, whether you're using paint or pencil, the trick is to get rid of the brush strokes and get rid of going from light to dark gradually. Okay, so you see this line here, and there's a little bit of a line there. I'm going to show you how to get rid of it. So I'm going to rinse off my brush, right, wipe it a little bit. And I'm just going to use the water and the little bit of paint that's already on there, go to that line, and just drag my brush across it. So I'm using the little bit of water that's already on there, just a little bit of water, and I'm fading that line out. And then notice how I'm wiping my paintbrush. And if you need to add more white, you can. And then I'm going to work my way towards the medium gray. All right. So we got rid of that line. All right. And you want to use a little bit of water so that it doesn't dry too fast on you. Okay. We'll go back to the solid white and just put a little bit up here. Okay, so now we have solid white. It's gradually getting gray, right, and getting darker. And now I'm gonna go ahead and mix a darker gray to go from here to the darker gray. Again, taking a little bit of, so I need less white this time. And then putting it in a new batch. I'm not touching this one because if I need it later, I have some. And then grabbing some more black and mixing that. Everyone good? Notice how much I'm mixing, and I'm rotating my paintbrush in order to get all the paint off of my paintbrush and mix it. Okay. I will be using that in a minute to help blend this right here. Adding a little bit of water so it doesn't dry too quick on me. Keep in mind, this is going to be solid black. Okay. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and blend this over here. So rinse out my paintbrush. Common thing that people forget to do is rinse out the paintbrush. Okay, especially when they're going from one paint to another. Right, my iPad keeps locking. I need to fix that. And you guys need to tell me if it locks and you can't see what I'm doing. Alright, so you see how those lines are disappearing? Make more paint. So I'm making it darker as I go to the right hand side. Now again, I want to reiterate, we started with the lighter side first. You always want to start with the light because it's easier to go darker and way hard to go from dark to light. You actually will use way too much white to try and go from the solid black to solid white. Okay, you're gonna just be wasting paint. So again, notice how little paint I've been using. You don't really need to use a lot of paint. Alright, so I have solid black, a gray, another gray, right? But I now need to blend them better, or do a better job of blending it. So I'm gonna go with a little bit of white. A little bit of gray in it. So notice how many things I have already mixed, pre-mixed. Okay, and then go back. And then start blending them all together. But again, I started on the light side and I'm making my way towards the darker side. Always wiping. Sometimes you can use your fingers to blend the paint. You wanna, my hesitation for telling you guys to do this is tearing your paper. So that's why it's probably better to just use the paintbrush. Questions, or is anyone having problems with things?
No.
Okay. Just like with anything, the more you do something, the better you will get at it. The key is doing it more. If you don't do it at all, then you're never going to get better at it. Ryan, do you have any questions? I know you came in a little later. Ryan? Are you still here? You can type it in the chat if you don't want to turn on your mic, Ryan. Okay. Another cool thing about acrylic, or I think is cool, once it dries, if you don't like it, you can paint over it and it won't show up. Which is kind of what I'm doing right now. There's little things I don't want that I want to fix. And it's already dry, so I'm just painting over it to get a better, smoother transition between the values. See, that's a little smoother. Okay, and then the last one I want to get rid of is this line right here. So I'm going to do that next. Kind of feel like Bob Ross right now, because when he's on TV, no one's talking back to him. He's just like talking to himself and doing what he's supposed to be doing. You guys know who Bob Ross is, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good. Oops. So yes, I am doing this maybe a little faster than maybe you're able to or want to be doing it, but that's okay. I've done this more times than 5 times, right? So I should be a little faster at it. If it's a little slow, it's fine. The goal is that you're doing it and that you're practicing it, because you will be having to do this for your first project. Remember the pop bar example or examples that I showed everyone? Okay. Alright, so that's a little better. Still not happy with this part, but you get the idea. What I don't want is, what we don't want to have is solid lines going down through the whole rectangle, right? That's what we don't want. So if you have a little bit of line showing, it's okay. It's not a big deal. Alright. Give you guys a minute to finish that. Can I go on, or do you guys need me to wait?
You can move on.
Okay. Alright, so we're gonna do solid white to a solid color. Someone give me a color.
Red.
Red. Cool. Let's go with red. Let me do this red. Alright. So still using white. Right? Now I'm gonna put a little bit of red. Hold on, let me kind of mix the paint a little bit. If you guys are using tubes and they've been sitting around for a while, do yourself a favor and just squeeze them like this in order to get the paint moving around. Sometimes it clumps up if it's been sitting for a while. Again, we don't need a lot. So what do you think we're going to start off with, the white or with the color?
With the white, obviously.
Good. I'm glad Jair was able to figure that out. If Jair can figure it out, I think everyone can figure it out, right?
What the heck?
Mande.
Little Peach.
Okay, ve dile mamá.
But she was gonna take us music.
Okay, ve con mamá, ahorita te va a ayudar. Sorry guys, that's my son.
That is being mean.
What's that? Yeah. Don't worry, he's used to it too. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the white, as Jair pointed out. So start with the white again, right? It may seem kind of redundant or wrong that I'm putting white on top of white paper, but remember, I'm doing this because we're going to be blending it with the red paint. And again, notice how I'm going past the middle part. A lot of people will stop and like, oh, I'm going to stop here because then I'm going to blend in with the red. Well, no, it's the remember the white paint is going to be wet, and then I'm going to blend the red into it. So what happens when you add white to red? What do we get?
Pink.
Yeah, you get pink. All right, so I'm going to take some white here, since white is lighter. Put it in here, and then take a little bit of white or a little bit of red. I'm gonna rinse out my paintbrush. Take a little bit of red. That much red, you can barely see it on the paintbrush, and mix that in. So get that pink that we want. Again, keep in mind that's wet, or that should still be wet. All right. Don't worry about that line right now. We'll make it a little darker in a minute, or blend that a little bit. And then I'm just gonna grab more red, mix it in another spot that should be more red than the pink that we just made. I'm gonna put that in the center. Some people will say, oh, I'm gonna make them all and make all these lines, and later I'm fading them out. Keep in mind, if you're done and you have lines, guess what? This will be dry and this will be dry by the time you're over here. So you want to be aware of that, unless you're planning on repainting it on top. Okay. So I'm gonna rinse out my paintbrush, and then I'm gonna blend those two lines out. Okay, rinse paintbrush with a little bit of water on it, just a bit. And I'm just using the paint. I'm gonna take a little bit of white, not a lot of white. And I'm dragging the paintbrush over that line. You see how it disappeared it, or made it disappear? And then I'm gonna keep dragging over to the darker pink. Rinse, I need to rinse again. And then blending that line again. Notice how I haven't gone back to the white. If I go back to the white, I have pink on my paintbrush, and it's gonna mess up the solid white. There. I wipe my paintbrush a lot, like on my hands. So at the end of when I'm painting, no matter what kind of paint I'm using, my hand is always painted a variety of colors, if you guys remember in class 2. Alright, so that's looking good, right? Okay, I'm going to take solid red and start over here. And that should still be wet. Remember, I'm dragging my paintbrush, not pushing. When you push, you ruin the paintbrush, and you won't get a nice clean line. Okay, so that pink is kind of dried a little bit. So I'm going to rinse my paintbrush with a little bit of water. The other difficult thing about this that I want you to be aware of, do you guys see that you can't see through the paint? You can't see the paper underneath? If you can, you need to add another layer or another coat of paint. And this tends to happen when people are blending and fading out colors. They'll just water it down a lot to the point where you can't see the paint anymore, and you can just see the paper. Alright, so there is my gradual change from solid white to a color, and creating that blending, that gradual change from solid white to solid red. How's everyone doing? You know what? I'm gonna pause this.